How's it going? How's everybody doing today? I'm out here with the Grand Cherokee again today. No Gary today, no little Gary. I guess he got busy with other things. I know he said he might have to work today, so no problem. I've been out here tinkering around with this thing myself, and I just wanted to go over some more specifics today, since I kind of did a short overview yesterday on what we were doing with it and why I was helping Gary. And so you see I've got, well, we've pretty much got everything off. All that's got to come out now is literally the two motor mount bolts, and it'll come out. The core support in the whole front end is pretty easy to take off once you start taking things out. It's just a few Phillips screws on the grill, and then there are several 10mm bolts that hold the core support in, or, you know, I don't even really call it a core support on these because it's plastic. It's more just a nose panel. It holds the headlights and stuff. And then you've got a couple of metal hoops that come up from down here, and they come up to the top, and they hold the top of the core support, and they bolt onto the top of the radiator support there. So you take all that out of the way, and then you go to removing the rest of the stuff, the radiator and all. Quick note, while we're up here talking about all this stuff up front and taking it off, if you're ever up around the front of your Jeep on a Grand Cherokee, or if you're near the back driver's side on a regular Cherokee and you smell gas, it's probably your evap canister. And on the Grand Cherokee, they're right here in the corner. That's your evap canister. It's rectangular, and what happens is these lines get old and they rot. Now, I don't know if you can really make out. It's hard to see from the sun glare on the screen here, but they get kind of rotten, and then vapors permeate. They penetrate through the old rubber. So on a Cherokee, it's back under, basically under the passenger's or driver's side rear seat, under the floor. The same canister is mounted back there, and same thing. That same line right there rots, and then you get fuel vapors. So that's just a little helpful secret there. You see what you got to do with these, and there are several different ways to go about doing an engine swap in one of these, depending on the way you want to do it. If you're going to remove the transmission with the engine, if you're going to leave the transmission in, just pull the engine out. It all makes a bit of a difference. If you're going to leave the transmission in the vehicle, what you'll want to do is you'll want to go underneath, and actually my creeper's on the other side. Duh. So the transmission's out of this one, but I can still show you. You want to come underneath, and you'll want to disconnect your whole wiring harness, which is, I mean, there's plugs that go to the transmission, and there's some that go to the oxygen sensors back behind the catalytic converter. You've got your downstream sensor. You want to disconnect that, and you've got a vent line for the transmission, and then of course your speed sensors and all go to the transfer case. Disconnect everything down here, including your kickdown cable if you want to, or you can disconnect it at the top and just leave the cable in the vehicle. It's honestly just as easy either way. And then you can pull the engine and the entire wiring harness out, because it's a sub harness. And what I mean by that is it's not part of the whole vehicle harness. There is your whole engine wiring harness and everything that goes down to the transmission. It just comes up to these two connectors right here that plug into the PCM down there, and these two connectors right here, which plug into these two right here. So if you unplug those four connectors, and then all the connectors down off the transmission and transfer case, the whole wiring harness, sub-harness assembly comes out with the engine. And that's the way they install it at the factory. They put the engine, transmission, and transfer case, if applicable, together on the assembly line. Then they put the whole wiring harness on that, and then they shove the whole thing in the vehicle, and they just plug in those four plugs, and it's ready to go. So it stands to reason it'd be just as easy to pull it out in the same fashion. So the other part of it is the main power and ground and all to it. And this is your battery ground, which connects to the firewall right here. Is a 15mm bolt. You take that off, and of course your positive wires to the battery, and then you've got two leads, a red one and a green one, that go to your fuse block, and they both bolt on the 113mm nut on the well, it's actually the power distribution center PDC. Take all that off, and you've got one more plug down here, right there, that is just attached to the seam on the body there. You unplug that, and of course your AC compressor. I mean, I didn't have to unplug that because that stays with the sub harness. Actually, no, I did, because the compressor is staying. So you do all that, then of course your fuel line, you got to take it off the rail, and there's a bracket that bolts to the side of the intake there. You pull that off. Your brake booster vacuum line, your emissions vacuum line, what else? Of course the throttle cable, transmission kickdown cables, and cruise control if applicable. And of course, if the transmission's coming with the engine, you don't have to disconnect the kickdown cable up here. So, but if you are going to leave the transmission, of course, you want to disconnect it at either end, like I said earlier. Your motor mounts, I think they're just 19mm on both sides, or 18 on one side, 19 on the other, and they're pretty easy to get to once the air box and all that is out of the way. The transmission dipstick tube laying right here.